This is Growing My B2B Brand, where we look at ways that companies can grow to the next level and achieve their goals. We'll look at improvements that are immediately actionable. Let's get started. So today we're welcoming Tyler Lessard. He is with Vidyard, and we're really excited to have him here today. So welcome, Tyler.
Oh, thank you so much, Kara. It's a pleasure to be here on the show. And you know, it's a fun time for me because at Vidyard, we're of course a video tech company, and it's a really exciting time for the rise in use of video. So really excited to be here.
Great. Well, you know, on Growing My B2B Brand, we've talked about a lot of different things, but we haven't yet broached the subject of video. So this is the first time that we're really talking about this with the B2B marketers, the B2B, executives who might be listening. So I'm excited to broach that. So I know that one of the things, if you listen to podcasts as you do or participate in them, one of the questions that you get asked a lot is, what's something you disagree with in your area of expertise? But rather than do that, I'd like to ask you, what is something that you aren't asked often that you wish you were asked about?
Oh, good question. So I am the video guy here, as we alluded to, and I spend most of my waking life thinking about how companies can use video to be successful. And a lot of people ask me on, what are the best practices and how can I be using video better, both sales and marketing. But very few people ask me, I recognized this earlier today because somebody finally did, what do people do wrong with video? It's always the question of what do they do right, but what do people generally do wrong with video? And that opened up, I think, a full hour-long conversation, which was really fun.
Yeah, well, that's what we were just chatting about earlier is there's all these things that people can share with you about settings and, the way that you film and so on. And just even the camera that you use or the microphone that you use, as, we've talked about before, setups can be very minimal with some people that I've been really surprised with that just use their, MacBook and the camera in the MacBook and the sound in the MacBook. And then there are some people that have pretty elaborate setups. So,
yeah. Well, it's funny, on the topic of, what people do wrong and what people do right with video in today's marketing world is that we've come to this point where there's this really interesting middle ground that has kind of arisen of the kinds of videos and how people are using video in modern marketing. It used to be the majority of the ways people were using video was higher end promotional content,
right.
Social media content, largely trying to create videos that would get a lot of views and eyeballs and spending a lot more money on that content, but doing it, maybe a few times a year. And then on the flip side, there was the very raw, just like, live Q&A or something like that. But there's arisen this really strong use of video right in between there for all stages of the buying journey, which is this, still more authentic, more relatable, more casual, more conversational style of video that is created in-house largely, maybe with a partner or an agency, but is really just geared around clearly and visually helping to educate people on ideas, to answer key questions, much like we do in audio format with podcasts, but in lots of different ways in modern marketing. So it's a topic that's really interesting to me these days. And I've seen all these great examples of how companies are really getting behind that and saying, we can create our own video content. One of the problems they often make is overthinking it too much and going, it has to be this, or it fits here, or I have to get it produced this way. And starting to realize it's just an alternative and often richer way to deliver your message, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really sparked my imagination, earlier this year was thinking about how startups and even entrepreneurs can use video during the sales process. And as you're talking about kind of the different stages of the customer buying journey and life cycle. So that was something that I'd never really used video before in that way, of really personalizing a video, doing it on the fly versus, you working with somebody to make it really polished, So that's been something that I've really enjoyed sampling with. And that's, honestly how I came to know Vidyard. So, it's been a fun journey. I did want to ask you, this is something that I've been excited about is, you recently released your new book, The Visual Sale. And that kind of goes along with, what I was just talking about. So it talks about the fact that businesses are struggling to adapt to a video first world. And what are some of the reasons why companies need to invest in video in order to grow?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of really simple reasons when you think about it. First and foremost is just our audiences have changed, right? And they continue to change so much in terms of their expectations and when interacting with brands and their preferences, right? And that's led to a lot of the change we've seen in modern content marketing and digital marketing and selling is to, start to meet the prospects and customers where they are and where their expectations lie. Mm-hmm. And, we're here on a podcast because a lot of people over the last number of years have started to embrace this idea of audio-based content. And I want to be able to listen and subscribe and interact with it in different ways. And many other people, also prefer or will look for video-based content to learn about ideas, to engage with brands, to meet people at different organizations, or again, to hear different ideas. And so I think there's, the really simplest reason is your audiences just expect it. But more importantly, that's been happening. But what's happened over this last year of crazy chaos in this world is that it got accelerated because we all got put into this digital divide, right? We very rarely see prospects or customers in person, if at all, these days. And so video is now the face of our brand, of our people, of us as sellers and marketers. And, I think more and more people are just continuing to thrive and look for that. And, it not only gives us an opportunity to educate our audiences, but to be transparent, to introduce ourselves, to create a more personal relationship, whether that be a one-to-one sales video that you're sending somebody, whether it be an educational marketing video with real people at your company explaining ideas or answering questions, right through to campaign style videos that are meant to create a more emotional response. So lots of these use cases emerging. And I think it's time that it just becomes a part of the culture of how we run our business.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different things I can think of that, just with podcasts used to be a very audio driven thing, and they still are for a lot of people. But now I'll soon be loading all my podcasts up on YouTube to expand that, reach and experience for people, as a lot of other people are doing. That this is not just, podcasts now are not just audio. There can be an audio visual experience. And, Absolutely. We also, for those of us that are on LinkedIn, seeing a lot of snippets that are created from these podcast videos that are, put up as different posts, seeing people doing live streams on LinkedIn, which is kind of also a different use of video and sometimes a lower quality, a lot of times, as they're live streaming, but just the expectation that we're spending so much more time with this visual content. And not even, I mean, there is a part of it, obviously, that we're marketing ourselves, but it's also a point of learning, of really, us learning as individuals and within an organization, how to best move our companies forward. So, one of the things you also talk in there is kind of about the show me economy. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's another big part of the way we think about using video. It's got a few of these innate superpowers in my opinion. And in the book, I talk about the 4 E's of video. And those 4 E's are, it's more educational than written content because of how our brains process information. It has the potential to be more emotional and create an emotional response with our audiences. It can be more engaging because of how we get drawn into visual storytelling, into hearing people's voices, intonation, body language, all those things that don't come through in written format. And finally, empathetic. It has the ability to create a more human connection, to really show, not just tell, that we understand our audience and that we understand the challenges they have and that we're here to help. And if you think across those, the reasons video is more educational, emotional, engaging, and empathetic, is partly because of the humanity we can bring into it, and partly because of how we can show people. We can genuinely show people what we mean, how to solve problems, how to do certain things. There's a little anecdote in the book that I shared, which was, when I was a younger lad and, I had one of my first car, and I live up here in Toronto, just, in Canada. And so we get cold winters. And if you've got an older car and an older battery, some of those really cold winter mornings, your car won't start and you need to get a jump start. Mm-hmm. And I remember plain as day, the first time I had to jump start my own car. And it was the scariest thing, Kara. Like, you're like, something's going to blow up here. Like, I just know it. I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to lose this car, right? Like, if I hit the wrong wire to something, it's all going to go downhill. And so you Google, right? You're like, how do I jumpstart a car? And there's instructions, right? There's like step 1, take the red wire, hook it to the positive. Step 2, and you're like,
Ground the car.
Okay, I think I get it, but which I'm not sure which one, is this the negative? Is that the positive? And then you click the video and you watch the video and you see somebody do it and you're like, that's it. There we go. I can like very clearly and in a trustworthy way know that this is how it's done because I can see that that person didn't blow up. Yeah. And it's a simple example in our personal lives, right? And we all always go back to the fixing a toilet video and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, you got to see it. And then we all think, well, that's for our consumer lives where we need videos for this. But it is exactly the same in business. It is exactly the same. I don't care if you sell software like we do, if you sell physical products, if you're a services company, there are always things that you can and should be showing people to help them understand what you can offer, but to do so in a trustworthy, provable, indisputable way. And there's so much power in that. And I think a lot of us try to almost hide that from our prospects and customers. It's almost like, well, we want to tease their interest. And then if they want to see how it is they can do things, they got to talk to our sales team, right? Or they got to unlock this, or they got to give me all their information. And I just think we got to get past that because people expect to be able to buy and research on demand online. They expect to be able to learn. And if you're not showing them and telling them something, somebody else is. And I think that, again, is the real opportunity is we need to put this stuff out there, and video can truly show people how it is they can do business with you. And that's a really important piece.
Well, and I have a question for you about inbound in a minute, but I was thinking as you were talking about webinars, because webinars used to be the thing, and not that webinars aren't a thing anymore, but it seems like talking to people in a very authentic way about your product and about, what you offer seems to be a different approach than the way we used to approach webinars. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, the future of the webinar?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we've seen this evolution where, a webinar is no longer defined as a certain type or style of content. Because to your point, the webinar, the old dictionary definition of a webinar was this online presentation where a presenter would go through slides, in a broadcast mode to an audience. And the reality now is that a webinar is a channel that people are familiar with to deliver content to your audience. And that could be walking through slides, of course. It could be a conversational discussion between two people. It could be a panel style discussion. It could be something where you allow people from the audience to raise their hand, come on in and be a live part of the conversation. It could be other forms of live video, not just slides and not just a talking head. I could be in front of a whiteboard drawing things and teaching people just like an actual professor in university might teach a remote class. So all those things can now happen in a webinar format. The same thing holds true for live streams, which are really the same thing as a webinar, just done live, right? And they may have different time expectations, but it's the same idea. And I think those are the things we need to be mindful of is that, these are containers, webinars, live streams, these are containers for doing visual content, but there's so many ways we can use it. And that conversational style content is often just as important as the presentation style, because it does allow for people to hear a more unfiltered discussion that may in many cases be more believable and more valuable to them.
Sure. So my question about inbound, Tyler, is, inbound marketing came to the forefront almost 20 years ago, which is crazy to me. How has content marketing changed? And, when I originally thought about this, it's like, why is video so important? Well, we kind of know at this point in our conversation why video is so important, but, how do you think, video has changed inbound marketing? And I know that there's a few things that I kind of have in mind, but I'm curious to, hear what you think.
Well, this is one of my favorite questions for what it's worth to think about and to riff on is like what's happened with content marketing and inbound marketing, because it has been 20 years, and the first, let's say, decade of content marketing was really about hiring an agency to write articles for you for your own website or your blog. as a way to drive more inbound traffic and a real focus on search engine optimization, right? So it's like, these are the keywords, these are the questions, write what you can in a scientific way, stuff it with the keywords to get inbound traffic, right? Yeah. Which was great. And most of us outsourced it because it wasn't yet a core part of what we do. And then the next phase was we brought it in-house because we realized, hey, actually, push-based advertising isn't really working that well anymore. Everybody's got ad blockers, nobody trusts anything anymore. So this inbound thing is really, really important. So let's bring it in-house. And people started having in-house content writers, and they would, have a greater frequency of publishing because now they have an in-house person to do it. And the blogs really exploded, but it also evolved into guides and PDFs and other forms of static content that people were looking to interact with. And now I think we're in this kind of third wave of content marketing, which is this, multimedia, multi-channel world of content, where right back to where we started the conversation, people's expectations and preferences have changed in the last decade, and particularly in the last 20 years. They don't necessarily always now want to read an article about a topic. In many cases, they want to watch a video. They want to listen to a podcast, right? And I think the best content marketing programs right now are built around this notion of there are key topics, questions, ideas, keywords that we want to focus on. And we are now going to own the conversation around those through various channels and media formats. And instead of saying, we need to write articles for 100 different topics, let's own the conversation around 10 or 20 key topics, and let's tackle them in written form with a blog. Let's create a podcast series where we're talking about those ideas. Let's create videos that tackle those, use those on our website as well as YouTube, which is now a new channel for us. Let's create social-centric content that acts as teasers into those things and pulls people back. And who knows what the other channels are now, right? We've got Instagram. Some of us have TikTok, depending on your business. I'm on Clubhouse now, like hosting audio rooms. It's like, I don't know what's going to be next, but it's really interesting. And so, I didn't just answer this, like the video specific, but that's what I think this evolution of content marketing is. And the big impact for all of us, like as content marketers and marketers, is, are we equipped to do that now? Like, again, a lot of the content marketing we grew up with was an in-house writer, and those are still super important. But do you have the ability to create a video or create a podcast just as you would have written an article previously? Or are you still outsourcing those?
I mean, sometimes it's easier now to create a video than it is to write an article. Because, when you're writing this article, you feel like you've got to think of all the right words. It has to flow exactly, in a certain way. And, it may have to be approved by somebody, before it goes out and things like that. I mean, it's, I was thinking about this with one of my clients and talking about whether a blog was still important. And, the idea that a small company commits to writing 2 articles a week, or two posts a week, when they are managing an entire marketing program, for a bunch of audiences, that can be very daunting. And you hate to make it something where it's like, you must produce 2 articles a week, right, no matter what. And you got to come up with what are those supposed to be. And so, the idea that you can say, okay, we're going to look at search, we're going to see what people are talking about, what's relevant to our companies. I mean, I was just actually watching a video before we got on here about SparkToro and Rand Fishkin. And he was talking about, how you search down and get to that core group of people that really are talking about what you're doing and care about what you're doing. And I think that that's an interesting future to kind of go down and really find that, to micro target instead of, really doing this whole big, broad funnel, that we used to do.
Yeah. Well, one of the other neat things about video and podcasts as well, which we are living right here in a very meta way, is that they also give you platforms much more so than written content to create participatory content where you are bringing other voices in a much more easy and natural way, right? It's you can get contributed writers to your blog, but if I reached out to Rand Fishkin and said, hey, Rand, would you mind writing an article for my blog? Right? He'd be like, go away. Like, no, maybe ghostwrite one for me and then I'll probably not, But if I went to Rand and said, hey, Rand, would you be up for doing a 15-minute video interview with me where we talk about this topic? 9 times out of 10, the answer is, yeah, absolutely. I'm in. Let's do this. Right. Because for them it allows them to build their personal brands in different ways, the visual style of it. And that's actually also a really neat thing, which a lot of people don't tap into is going, oh yeah, like we should still, like, I believe we should still do written blog posts. They absolutely have their place. But in parallel, yeah, how are you activating those same ideas through video? And it's not just, hey, I'm going to read what I wrote on the blog in front of a camera.
Exactly.
It's like, let's explore that idea in different ways. I could bring in an expert. I can get a customer, right? We could record a video. We could do, this episode. There's all these neat ways that you can now be more creative with it. And I think that's a lot of the power. It's also a struggle for some people because it is almost too creative of a medium. And they're like, I don't know what to do.
It really depends, I think, on the personalities, and that's what finding those champions within your company that like video, that can be good on video, that can ad lib. There's a lot of talents that really go into doing this well. Even just voice projection and things like that, to make it work. It does take some preparation, but I think that that's one of the great things is trial and error. I think that, video, yes, it can live forever on sites, but it's also something that's constantly evolving and or not constantly evolving, but the timeline is moving forward so fast that the old videos kind of fall behind and you're onto the new stuff. People are looking at what's new. And it's similar with written content too, but I just think it's a little bit more forgiving. If you screw up a live feed, it's not the end of the world. Or like me, if you have an office cat show up, that's usually par for the course around here. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, you released the Video and Business Awards in December.
Yeah.
And I would really love to know, what surprising things did you learn from your customers and what kinds of results are companies seeing?
Yeah, that's my favorite program. Every year we run it, the Video and Business Awards, to celebrate and recognize marketers and sales teams that are doing awesome things with video. But most importantly, it's all about like how it's creating a real impact in their companies. So the best part is it's not like who made the best video or who had the biggest budget to make, Coca-Cola commercial. It's like real sort of tactical impact on companies. And, there were a few really interesting highlights this year. One was on the marketing side. We saw two kind of types of content really rise to the top. One was educational inbound style content, and so many great examples of marketers that are really embracing that notion of tackling key topics, answering key questions in video-based format. And many of them in B2B, even more so than B2C, doing it in a way has kind of more like a YouTuber creator mentality to it. And many of them are episodic. So they're creating recurring, so sort of they've got an overall like theme to their brand, like the folks at Retrofoam, who, they're a home insulation foam company, and they have an amazing series called Foam University with Professor Foam, who's like the GM of the company, and he wears this lovely velvet blazer in every episode. He's very iconic in it, and these are all like 3 to 4 minute videos teaching people about really important questions that they have. And it's done in a way that isn't at all about the company, right? It's all about true thought leadership. And, there are a lot of the similar topics that they tackle in blog posts, they do in video format as well. And it gives them sort of 2 different channels to hit people with. And that's been incredibly successful for them. And they found that, it doesn't cannibalize one or the other. They're both getting high engagement from audiences, and it's having a huge impact. So that's one interesting area. Lots of companies doing that. The other was really great brand storytelling. And, done so in a way that, again, isn't like necessarily $1 million production, but really authentic brand storytelling that is bringing, issues, bringing ideas, bringing stories of their customers to life in creative ways. And some of the best ones I saw were actually customer stories, but they weren't your typical case study. It wasn't your usual like format of like, okay, I had this problem and they did this, and then it was an 80% return on investment, right? It was actually their customer's story. It was like, let's get to the heart of this. Like, what makes these guys tick? What are the big challenges they face? What have they done recently? Like, what are they excited about? And it wasn't at all about their brand or their own products. It was about celebrating their customers and how amazing they are and what they've accomplished generally, right? And it's the kind of stuff that you watch and you're like, I feel good after watching that. I don't feel like I have to take a shower and I was just trying to be sold to, it was like really genuine, authentic storytelling. And I think a lot of that, both of those ideas come back to this notion of just this very genuine use of video to really connect with people, to not sell, not market, but to truly help and to share stories. And I think that's so much of the power right now.
Well, so our final, minute or so here, what are some of the changes that you're going to make personally to your content creation in 2021?
One of the things that I really want to do, and let's call it a resolution for this year, is to get better at my consistency in creating and sharing content. It's something that I know our own marketing team does well, and we have a disciplined calendar in terms of, what we're doing. But I think me personally, I need to get more consistent in publishing my own content on my social profiles and in other places to ensure that, there's not a week that goes by where I'm quiet out there, because in today's world, that can be a really big impact. So I need to do that. I need to start thinking about that. But it also means I don't have to strive for perfection with everything. It's about that, like every couple of days, let's share an idea, let's put something out there to keep my brand going, to keep engagement with my audience going, and to stimulate conversations.
Yeah, I can hear you on that one. I mean, that's something that, I let it go a little over the holidays, but, we're kicking it back into gear in January, and I'm looking forward to a new year filled with more great content. So I want to thank you so much, Tyler, for being here with us today on Growing My B2B Brand. And, stay tuned, everyone, for the next episode. I'm sure you'll enjoy it and continue to find new ways to improve and evolve. Thank you so much.